Welcome to our fifth series of Educators Supporting Educators. These are webinars that we started just a few weeks ago, right before the close downs all began across the world. Originally, it stems from an idea where I had an idea of just trying to figure out how we could pair some of the amazing educators that I knew who had already been teaching online with educators who are about to begin online. So I sent out a Google form, and I received a handful of people, actually quite a good chunk of teachers who volunteered. And then every school in the world started to close down, and trying to pair people, one mentor to one teacher, was going to be impossible. So that's where the webinar series came from. In a little bit, I'll be sharing over in the chat a link to that document in case you want to sign up to serve on a panel in the future. We're looking for additional topics and additional people in the future. Two different options. On the right is the chat. So from there, we'd like you to say where you're from, say hi, and that is where, when we're having our discussions, feel free to post links to resources, things of that nature. There's also a Q&A on the bottom. The Q&A is for questions directly to the panelists. Now, first, we have questions from you. We received hundreds of questions ahead of time when you registered, and we've chunked those into themes that we'll be talking about throughout our discussion this morning. My colleague Laura Benson is over here on the side, and she'll be helping me. She's the Director of Professional Development and Learning at ISS, and of Curriculum and Professional Development. And she'll be monitoring the Q&A and helping us get through those, and we'll be answering those as well at the end. And my other colleague, John Burns, is invisible here on the side, and he's helping us take care of all the tech issues. The chat and the Q&A will both be transcribed, and a link will go out afterwards. Additionally, the link to this video will be on our webpage and also on YouTube, and all participants will be sent that. The YouTube video will be closed captioned for hearing impaired, so we'll have that available to all participants as well. Oh, and I always forget to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Dana Watts, and I'm the Director of Research and Development at ISF. Okay, so what I'd like to do, so part one, we're going to answer the questions that came in. I'm going to post them as well in the chat in just a moment. But to get us started, I wanted our panelists to introduce themselves. So would you like to start us off, Matt?
Hi everyone, I'm Matt Barker. I'm originally from the UK, but now I'm living in Bangkok and working at International School Bangkok as a learning support teacher, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Bowl, and I am the Executive Director of Senya. I'm also an intensive needs teacher at International School Bangkok. And probably most important for this discussion is I'm also a mother of a son with profound autism. So I'm kind of coming at it from all angles here. Just real quick, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Senya. We are a network of special educators, teachers, parents, and related service providers who advocate for inclusion and provide resources and supports for the differently abled individuals. We hold an annual conference, and usually that's in the Asian region, but we've now expanded worldwide. And so we have regional chapters in Europe, South America, Africa, the Middle East, and hopefully soon in America as well. So check us out online.
Good evening from Malaysia. My name is Diane Foodie, and I work at the International School of Kuala Lumpur. I'm originally from Canada. I think I have the best job in the world because I'm the learning support teacher for the grade 1 level in our school. I serve mostly mild to moderate needs. While our school does still have an intensive needs program, I do not serve those students myself.
Hi everyone, I'm Erin Madonna. I'm currently at Shekou International School in Shenzhen, China. Prior to that, I worked in the United States for a decade as an intensive needs teacher as well. Here, I'm much more of a generalist. And next year, I'm excited that I'll be transitioning to the International School Bangkok, where I'll join the grade 1 and kindergarten teams there.
Hi, my name is Elaine Yando. I'm a speech and language pathologist and a learning support teacher at Yokohama International School here in Japan. I serve kids from the Early Learning Center all the way up to grade 12, and I'm really happy to be here.
Great, thank you everyone. Just to give you a quick preview of some of the questions that came in. So the themes that came in to our, when you guys registered, were discussing IEPs, differentiation, supporting parents, co-teaching, disengagement, specific strategies for early years, strategies for nonverbal and auditory learners, and then recommended platforms and things of that nature. So those will be the main questions we'll cover right away, and then we'll move on to questions in the Q&A. So to get us started, question number 1, how do you address IEPs and ILPs in an online environment? Diane, do you want to start us off with that question?
Sure. First of all, let me just remind you that I'm speaking about the early years here when I talk about IEPs in this way. I know how carefully those IEP goals were written, how they were considered so carefully, but they were also written for a normal school day and normal access to students and intervention time. And well, things just aren't normal now. So from my experience, what I've done right now is try to prioritize those goals. Take a look and see what really needs to be done to make kids successful for the beginning of the next school year. Which of those goals can be addressed somewhat even online? Does the intervention that was being used lend itself to online delivery, or could it be modified in order to do so? I also asked myself, what skills, if any, could parents reasonably support at home with my guidance? So the format for addressing the goals has been one-to-one sessions or small groups through video conferencing. I've recorded lessons for asynchronous practice at home that parents can watch and rewatch, pause with the students when needed. And I've really tried to focus on consolidating what was previously taught, considering how much of the school year we've gone through, rather than trying to introduce too much new material, just making sure that we get things sorted for the end of the school year, what's already being taught.
Erin, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I want to echo one of the things that Diane said, which is the focus, choosing your focus, because I think we really have to prioritize what are the essential elements in that plan that will support the child. So I completely agree with what Diane has said. The piece about the parents has been a powerful, realization for me in the work that I'm doing, is that if I can ensure that the parents really understand the goals that we're focusing on from the ILP, that they feel empowered to really talk about and utilize those goals with their own child, that we have more success working collaboratively together. So I do spend a lot of time, I think, with the parents on really what does that look like in the home setting versus the school setting. And then I think maybe a different piece to it that we could touch on is the data element of the ILPs. That, a lot of what we do is kind of monitor that growth that the child is, experiencing as they respond to our interventions and the work that we're doing with them. So in terms of that data piece, I think looking at the tools that you're utilizing for your online learning, things like Seesaw, your Zoom sessions and recording those, look at the different tools you're using to leverage those to be able to collect kind of that authentic data on the children, because that will set us up when we return to the classroom in person. That'll set us up with those baselines of, okay, now how do we move forward?
Wonderful, thank you. Just a quick reminder, when you're posting in the slide, if you can post to all panelists and attendees, so then the attendees can also see your chat, and then they can have access to any resources that you might be posting. I'm going to move us on to question number 2. Do you have any suggestions on how to differentiate online when you're dealing with a range of student needs, such as ASD, visual or hearing impairment, attention deficit, anything specific as far as that's concerned? Elaine, you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, sure. And before I start, I just wanted to give a shout out to my YIS colleagues, because the responses that I have today are a direct result from discussions with them and our experience that we've had since we've been on since the beginning of March. I just wanted to add on to Erin. I think it just kind of times nicely with hers is that, we have a triangle. We used to, where the child is in the center, and the parents are on the outside and the teacher is on the outside, but now we have to definitely put the parent on the inside as well with the child, and the teacher somewhat as well, working with the teachers more closely in the triangle. And, for the early years, with ASD, kids with ASD, it's more of a coaching model rather than direct intervention, because the parents are able to follow up at home and have some generalization at home. And as far as, yeah, so that's a really important thing. I have a quick example of that. We had a child in early years that had ASD, and we just, he had difficulty doing his seesaw activities because he's like, I don't do seesaw activity. I don't do these activities at home. I do them at school, right? So we had to work together to find a bridge from his school to his home life. And the parent was really stressed out, and they had more than one child at home. So you have to take that into consideration. And we have really open and consistent communication with the parent every day. And they can just Google chat us anytime they have a question or anything comes up. Look, I'm stressed about this. How am I going to do this? And we just shoot back an email. Our team does, the teacher, the assistant, and me. And it's worked out fabulously. So that connection with the parents is really important. And then for ADHD, for younger kids, if you're online with them, the common expectations that you have, to go over those at the beginning, not to walk around, or not when you have Google, when you're doing Zoom annotate, not to draw over it, just to, the expectations that you have, just some of the things that you do with them one-on-one, have a variety of activities, make sure some of the activities are new, have a schedule in sight, and also have parent involvement. That's really important. And for a little bit older, you can have the parent near there. So if you have to call them in. And lastly, for older kids, education, keep that education going. There's a great program. It's called How to ADHD. It's on YouTube, and I think I've added that to the resources. Checking in daily in the Google Chats with them. I do that for my older kids. Encouraging them to use Pomodoros, helping them manage their executive functioning with the Google Chat on a daily basis, and advocating for the kids, continue advocating for the kids. And sign up for the Google Classroom for the older kids so you know what's going on, and request regular feedback from the teachers.
Fantastic. Erin, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so I think that as teaching teams are working together to build their lessons in their units, I think an important piece to keep in mind is how is the child going to access this information, and how are they going to then be able to communicate about it? Keeping that sort of expressive receptive cycle in mind. So a lot of times when we push information out, lessons on Seesaw or things like that, we might have a giant block of text, right? Where we're getting all the important information front loaded. But for some learners, that's going to be really hard to access. So thinking about, can I pair it with a video where they can listen? Can I have visuals pop up on the screen so that they get a picture of important words? Do we have little vocab pop outs? Anything that you can do to make the access points to your lessons a little bit more smooth for students is a big win. And then thinking about that, the expressive end of things, when students are showing you what they've learned and their understanding. It could be something as simple as, I worked with a student this week, and they were with decimal places, and they were losing their place. And on Seesaw, there's, the background that's the graph paper. It can be as simple as pulling up that graph paper and having that be the background to then help them organize. So just being really conscientious as you're planning your units and your lessons and pushing them out about how is every child going to get the information they need, and then how are they going to be able to contribute and show what they know.
Fantastic, thank you. For question number 3, it is how might we involve and support parents who are working with their own children with diverse learning needs at home? Does anyone have, Elaine, did you want to start us off with that question?
Sure. Just like I said before, involving the parents, having consistent and open communication, like I gave the example with that, the parent, and keeping in mind that this is such a new platform for the parents, and that they have more than one child at home. So keeping that communication open. And at our school we have regular meetings, and we have a Google Doc like at the ELC where they can sign up anytime, and I've had quite a few conversations with parents, and just being available for them I think is really important, and getting feedback and checking the pulse of what's going on. Things change all the time on a daily basis. We know it kind of goes up and down like this. So just checking in all the time.
Yeah, so I think we're in our 11th week of online learning. And I think the mistake I made in the beginning was that I sort of came out of the gate running and I said, okay, here, parents, this is what we're going to do. And here's our marching orders, essentially. And stress levels raise, right, when that happens. So I think that that empathetic communication that Elaine was talking about, it's also really important for us as educators not to go into those conversations with an agenda, because our agenda becomes a to-do list for the parents. So I think that listen first piece is possibly the most important part. And then similar to when we do behavior interventions with children, you know, when we think about that 5-to-1 ratio where, you know, 5 positives for every 1 negative, I think celebrate those wins as much as you can, and then support and scaffold for the parent and coach, you know, and allow them to tell you what they need. You know, I think that balance becomes really important when you create that safe and, you know, moment with the parent, or that safe, you know, kind of reciprocal communication, then they're able to say to you, okay, this is a sticky spot. I need resources for this. Okay, how do we get through this? You know, I need to do this activity. What's the best way to do that? But I think not going in with an agenda is hugely powerful.
Can I just add something to that? I think also just assuming or not assuming that everything is okay and standard in the home. You know, this is such a stressful time for families, and the kids are feeling that stress. And so giving parents the permission that it's okay if your child doesn't understand this right now. It's okay if he's acting out during this lesson. He's acting out for a reason, and let's explore that reason instead of getting upset about the behavior. So it's just kind of that whole empathy piece, like Erin was saying, that understanding of what's going on in the home and giving parents that permission to just take a step back and say, think, what is important right now? Is it content or is it connection?
Lori, I think that's such an important piece. And I think one of the biggest things for all of us to remember is it hits us, what's happening around the world hits us in different pieces, right? Whether it's our students, our own children, or ourselves. And so you can have good days and bad days at any point, you know, and trying to navigate those things. And so expectations can change by the day on just how much people are going to be able to do and handle. So thank you. Okay, we can move on. Question number 4. Do you have any specific strategies or approaches for co-teaching and supporting classroom teachers? And Matt, want to get us started with that?
Yeah, I think the very first thing, and I think it's coming up as a recurring theme through what we're talking about, and that is patience. I think we all need to approach everything with so much patience, because all the rules have been thrown out and we're all trying to adapt to new rules. And as Erin was saying as well, we sort of get caught up with, you know, we go from 0 to 100 in the space of one physical lesson to our first virtual lesson. And you very quickly have to put the brakes on. So I think because of that, we really have to just take our time and really consider what it is we want to achieve. And what goes hand in hand in that is to meet the teachers that we work with and collaborate with where they're presently at in their journey. And I think that if we're trying to push too much, it's going to be counterproductive. So it's really important that we meet teachers where they're at. We're all on a journey, right? And we're all wanting to improve and increase inclusive practices. I think it's still important, even though you take all that into consideration, that we still continue to work in our roles as we normally do. I think if we're coaching, if we're collaborating, we're consulting, and that's dictated both by the needs of the teacher and it's dictated by the needs of the students in the class. So we have to approach every class very individually and every teacher as an individual. And what may be working very well in one class might just not be working so well in another class. So we have to adapt and change to that as well. I think as well, when we're thinking about the students that we work with, particularly in an inclusive setting, we really need to continue our advocacy for those students. And we have to be gently relentless, because what will happen is that those teachers can, with the best in the world, will have, you know, will be teaching to the middle sector, right? You know, to the majority of the students. And we still have to make sure that the students who have additional challenges with understanding or comprehension are still being supported, and that they can still access the content of the work. And so taking that into account, we have to hope that, and this is like a request to leaders throughout schools in the world, and that is to, you know, look at reducing content and helping teachers decide what are the key things that can be taught, right? Because teachers will feel like they still have to get through all the content. And I know that also if you're teaching towards examinations or you know, end papers, that's going to be an additional pressure. And teachers, I think, often need the permission to take their foot off the pedal and give their, you know, give their students a bit of a break. And so I think with that, if teachers given that permission from the leadership teams, then that will have a positive benefit again for all students. So the big takeaway, I think, as well, is plan less content and scaffold the content you've got more. Even things as simple as emails. Our students are getting bombarded by emails, absolutely bombarded. Every time you invite them to a Zoom or send them a link to Google Classroom or a Seesaw. So it's very hard for the students to navigate their ever increasing inboxes. And I think it's really important that we help the students manage their emails. And so if we have email protocols in place, that we can reduce some of the cognitive demands on the students by just sending less, and what we do send to be really succinct and to the point.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
I could go on.
Dana, can I jump in there just for one quick second? Because I think what Matt just said is so hugely powerful. Color code your emails and space them well, and you know, think about what is the visual impact of them.
Good. And
I was going to say one other thing to add to that, Erin, when you're saying the color codes, the visuals, you know, the bullet pointing, start with command terms, open the page, look at this, read, you know, using the command terms at the start. I think also there's a consistency with an online platform, right? Our students are navigating so many different platforms. And even though so many of our students are tech savvy, it's very different being tech savvy in a classroom with a teacher standing beside you than it is to being tech savvy with 20 or 30 other students all learning remotely. You know, some of our simple platforms do have that layer of complexity added simply because they're no longer with you when they're using that platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to a learning support teacher from Thailand, and she was mentioning about how they're using all different platforms. All the teachers are using different platforms, and it's so confusing. So having one consistent platform, it could be different within secondary and elementary, and using, you know, technology that the kids already know, that they don't have to go and learn. And just to add on to that, I did ask the teachers when I was asked about, you know, I was asked to come on here, I did ask the teachers, what do you find, you know, that's helpful and what has supported you? And mostly all of them said, going out of your role that you had previously and supporting us in ways that we need. And for example, you did X, Y, and Z before, but now you're helping me. For example, you're coming onto my Google, is my classroom, and you're leading a classroom this morning. That's really helping me a lot. And you're coming and you're making your presence online. And so you're having these observations that I've never seen before, that I wouldn't have otherwise, because everybody's so stressed. So coming out of your role that you had before and being flexible, kind of like their rocks, your water, kind of going in and out, has been the most helpful. I think that's what teachers have reported to me.
Fantastic. I'm going to move us on to question number 5. How are you addressing disengagement or the lack of capacity for students to engage with online learning? So it kind of stems straight from what we were just talking about. Matt, you want to take a stab at that?
Employ all the strategies I just talked about
There you
that
go.
we've already mentioned. Again, I think, first of all, it comes down to school and school policy. And I think school policy can address this, right? And I know that leaders are looking at how they do it. And our school, for example, has just brought in a compassionate grading, do no harm policy as to when we moved from being back at physical school into the virtual environment. And I think that's really good, because it's saying that as long as the students are keeping up with their work and and completing the work, even if the standard is not where it was necessarily at before, you're not going to penalize them for that. And I think it's a great idea. I think we need to be very case specific in terms of the reasons why each student might not be engaging as well as we wanted them to be. It could be, curriculum content. It could be the home life situation. I think there's certain things that we can do. For example, we can establish clear routines within the classes that we teach so that the students have a sense of familiarity and know what's going to occur during the classroom. I think also for some students with the engagement piece, it lends itself really well for teachers to get creative around assessment and to get really, think really outside the box, if you like. The UDL, the Universal Design for Learning, is an excellent website, right? Which talks about you can assess in so many ways and teach in so many ways. And there's multiple means of engagement, representation, action, and expression. And I think if you start looking into that, we're better able to harness the passions of our individual students. And if we harness the passions, then already giving student agency, student choice, and student voice will hopefully support those students to get more out of their curriculum. Some ways to do that, there's the Mario framework as well, which is an idea where you give so much more student agency and the student drives their own learning, and it's all based around one-to-one conversations and conferencing with the students. That's been super helpful to help students with a very specific, get specific goals in place and to drive their own learning. And again, we know the research tells us that those students who are able to drive their own goals and know what they want to learn and have choice and voice in that are gonna have better outcomes. I think we also need to be pragmatic, right? And as well as we can paint wonderful glossy pictures of how well virtual learning is going, it can be tough, right? It's not always a bed of roses. I can't remember, we're in 7 or 8 weeks of virtual learning at my school now. And sometimes it's just all right to say, look, this is tough. I'm finding it hard as well, right? If we're always saying, no, it's great and we can do this, it's like, I think we pay our students a disservice if we always tell them it's wonderful, because we're denying a whole set of emotions, right? And one of the most important things we want to do with our students is connect with them and make sure that they feel safe and wanted and that they're involved and that they're cared for. So it's really important that we make sure that they get that message as well. We need to remember our in-class supports have been taken away and students have got so many more distractions. I mean, even us sitting here now, and I've got the distractions in my room, I've got the chat box flashing, I'm getting very excited about that, so even for us at the moment, we still have these distractions which we don't normally have. So I think understanding that we have those distractions and it's difficult to move those distractions away. And finally, I guess I want to say communication as well. We need to involve all the stakeholders in this process. If the student is not accessing the curriculum for whatever reason, we need to be on it quickly and we need to be figuring out what might be going on for that student and just exploring options for that student, with the parents, the teachers, and all concerned parties, so that the student has the best opportunity to achieve and get back on track.
I agree. Elaine, did you want to add something onto that?
I think Matt said it all. He was great.
Nobody can follow Matt. He's so eloquent.
And along the lines of distractions, I'm also trying, if I see someone asking for a link or I hear someone reference something like Matt just did with the Mario, I'm putting it over in the chat, but I'm trying to manage both. So if for some reason a reference is, or a resource is referenced and we don't have a chance to put it in the chat, they will come out after the call. We'll send everything out. Probably, it normally takes us about 6-7 hours, and then we send everything out, and you'll have links to anything that they mentioned whatsoever, or any links that anyone has posted in the chat as well. So those will be available to you. So don't be afraid if you miss something. We'll be sharing that all out after.
Oh, Dana,
yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to the question, the previous question. about how to support teachers. One of the things that one of the teachers that had also mentioned is that I had sent out, they have accommodations on their learning support plan, and a lot of them don't actually fit now. It's changed because they're online. So what we did was we picked the ones that we thought would be the most applicable for now, and we resent those out, and we discussed these with the teachers and the children and said, these are your accommodations, or we, we talked to them, what do you think is most important? So they know how to advocate for themselves, and because things have changed, so have their needs, and so that's one of the things that the teachers had mentioned was very helpful.
Great. Question number 6. Can you recommend some specific strategies for online inclusion specifically for the early years? Diane, did you want to start us with that one?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question. And really my thinking on that is that the strategies for online inclusion aren't that different from the strategies we would want to incorporate into the classroom, were we at school. And I really see 2 sides to this: the social emotional connections that are important for students, and then access to the academic tasks in the classroom. Big shout out to the classroom teachers at ISKL and the EAL teachers who are all working together to build up a beautiful day for our students. And the social emotional connections are achieved through having class Zoom meetings with the whole class there, specialist teachers, support teachers, and the children all have access to the activities that are done in this particular setting. It's not academic, it's a show and tell, it's scavenger hunts, it's a prompt for all the kids to answer. And they know ahead of time what the activity is going to be, so they can prepare their sentence stems if some kids need them in order to help them participate in the classroom conversation. And the feedback we're getting from students is that that's one of their favorite parts of the day, is the connection they get through the class Zoom meetings. On the other hand, there's the academic day that still needs to occur. And one of the things we can do is just keep to a very similar schedule that you would have in the classroom, from a morning meeting routine to the order of the day you might normally do: reading, writing, math, whatever that might be. Adding in brain breaks. There are some wonderful resources online that you can provide for students so that their day at home looks quite similar to their day at school. Erin talked a lot about using visuals, links, vocabulary boxes, anything to help the students get access to the learning plan for the day. We've tried really hard to scale it down to the very basics. I know our first slideshows that we put up for students were maybe 30+ slides long. And over the weeks, we've learned to just scale it back to not overwhelm parents or students, and really let them know what's crucial for the day, what needs to be done, what could be done if you have extra time or the interest. Another very important thing, of course, is a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their learning. They might just take a photo of an activity they've done away from the screen. It might be a video recording, an audio recording, a picture of some writing. The Seesaw platform lends itself to kids being able to demonstrate their learning in lots of different ways. And finally, I would say just seek lots of feedback from parents, from the students themselves. They have a lot to say. They think a lot about how their day is going. And we can gain a lot from that feedback in order to plan a truly inclusive day for all of our students.
Fantastic. Actually, I was next week we're going to do one on grading and reporting, and I was just listening to another webinar on grading and reporting and how important it will be this time in particular to have feedback from parents on the learning of our kids when we're trying to write up reports, because the parents have played such an essential role. Lori, did you want to also address that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, as a reminder, I teach the kids with intensive needs, so moderate to severe autism, Down syndrome, intellectual delays. So we have a different program and way we are running this, but the way we do our IEP goals, for instance, is all one-on-one. So we're working with the kids individually on those prioritized goals that Diane and everyone mentioned earlier. But the way that some of our students have been included is through specialist classes, so music, art, PE, and again, like the morning meetings and things that Diane mentioned. So just any time that you can get the kids involved, any opportunity, I highly encourage the teachers to invite them in to their classroom as often as they can.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to add very quickly that I get a real sense of how strong the bonds between the school teachers and the parents will be, you know, from all this communication and the opportunity for there to be such a consistent message, right, between teachers and parents. So what the students hearing at school is also hearing at home. That's such a good takeaway.
I think it'll be really interesting at the you know, our lessons learned and what have we learned and what have we, I mean, there are things obviously we've lost. Having a senior in high school right now, I hear about that a lot. But then what have we gained and what have we learned about education? And on a whole nother tangent, I'd love to see IEPs for every single student and individualized learning plans for every student so that we can differentiate for the learning needs of every child in the future. But try throwing that out there, I'm gonna end up getting tarred and feathered. Anyway, and having parents and student choice in there and all of those things would be really interesting to see in future conversations. Do you have any specific recommendations for working with nonverbal students or auditory processing disorders online? Because that's a whole new set of issues that we have that are prevalent right now. Lori, would you want to start us with that?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is my passion, and together I've worked with Kate Balsamo, who's our chair of Senya, who's another amazing speech path, and we've come up with some ways to engage with our students online. The first, I think that's most important is connection. The connection between the parent and us is essential, and we have to always rely on the parents for our Zoom sessions. This isn't a high school, middle school group where the kids can pop online and be by themselves. A parent has to be with our kids at all times. And so we have to have that connection and that buy-in from the parent. And we're very lucky that we have that. The second thing, I would just want to share my screen with you. I think it is key. Do you see a schedule up here?
Yep, you can make it the full screen if you want.
Okay.
Yep, perfect.
So keeping a visual schedule for kids at home is essential. And so our nonverbal kiddos, they rely on a schedule. And a lot of our students do actually. And the reason behind that is to take the anxiety away. Just like tonight, we were provided with the questions ahead of time that helped us plan, right? Understand what was happening for the day. So it helped ease our mind for that. So creating a visual schedule for the students, for them to do at home as well. And that includes their morning routine, their wake up, their brushing their teeth, the eating, and then all the way into the daily schedule. And so I called that part school for mine, and added in the different types of work that they can do with the parent side by side, not online, and then virtually with the Zoom lessons. So like our teacher or our librarian has daily story time with the kids, so they can log in for that. I send home our file folders for the students to be able to do independent work alone. And then we just work on Zoom lessons. So let me show you real quick. So a lot of my work that I do with the kids is, oh, don't have it here, sorry. We use First Then So we always want to do a first, maybe a non-desired activity, and then they earn something. So one of my kids just hates word work that we do. And so it's, it's painful doing the lesson at times. But if he knows that he's working towards something, then he likes, then he will get right on there and work. So we do a first then chart. And that works very well. Anything like dice games where you can roll a dice back and forth and take turns, my turn, your turn, those are all excellent things that we can do with our kids who are nonverbal. Again, it's not always about the content. A lot of times it's about the connection. So it's just that keeping that connection between humans, between teacher and child, and just making our kids laugh and enjoy this part of their day. So that's really my main recommendations. For kids that are also working on phonemic awareness or phonemic segmentation, this website called toytheater.com has the Alconin boxes where they can segment and say the sounds, the phonemic sounds each time they move a segment. So you just share your remote with them and they're able to segment each word. So that's been a real treasure for me to find.
Lori, while you're sharing such great resources, that actually brings us into our very last question about any recommended platforms or tools or resources that work specifically well with diverse learners. Would you and Elaine like to address that?
Yeah, well, again,
Yeah.
I'll stay on this teacher tools because they have this area here called virtual manipulatives. And I came across this on Twitter the other day. So I just want to say, follow Twitter because, man, Twitter and Facebook is where I found so many outstanding resources that I don't even know how I would be doing it without them. But,
Lori, which hashtags do you follow under Twitter to help you find these resources? Are there specific ones that help you in addition to Cinia?
Yes, and I've listed several down on our resource page, Autism Little Helpers. And that's something I didn't mention is social stories for our nonverbal kiddos are helpful. There's, you'll find it on the bottom of the resource list, but there's social stories, which are stories that help kids understand why something is happening. And so why are people wearing masks? Why do we have to stay home? When will we be able to return? Because so many kids with ASD don't understand what's happening. These social stories will help them with that understanding. So it's essential to get those to the parents and have the parents read them at least 10 times, just over and over again, so the kids can start to understand what's happening in their world. So this resource, this toytheater.com, has these virtual manipulatives. And I mean, they're amazing. If you need dice, there's dice. If you need counters, there's counters, 10 frames, everything that you could possibly need. This one's one of my favorites here. It's the interactive clock. And you can see that you can just move the hands and it will tell you the time and teach the kids how to tell the time. So that's been a fabulous resource. One other that I love is anything by Michelle Garcia Winner, Social Thinking. And she has a variety of social thinking skills, resources for free right now on her website. So socialthinking.com is a great place to find that. And it just helps kids understand and adapt to their social world around them.
Elaine, do you want to add on to that?
Sure. So just as an overall platform, I use Zoom a lot. I do a lot of online sessions, and I use Zoom with Annotate. It's been really, really great for the kids to be able to be engaged. For example, if you have bingo, you can just use one card and they can do stars and you do maybe hearts. On the bingo, they can circle things. You can play like a guessing game. They have to you describe it and they have to guess it and they can circle it. So just so there's some interaction. I find a lot of things on Teachers Pay Teachers. They now have an option to add distance learning to your search. So it lends to more of distance learning. I like Black Sheep, but that's out of the UK. These are all speech things, but they can be also for teachers as well. And they really lend to kids that have differing learning abilities. Super Duper, everyone's heard of that. Well, speech therapists in the States, I'm sure. Boom cards are a big thing now, where they're also interactive, and you can find some free boom cards on Teachers Pay Teachers and some other places. I do find a lot of things from Kate Balsamo on Facebook, through Senya, and for me personally, because when I first started, I tried to find my role. Where am I as a speech therapist, learning support therapist? But I just try to keep it simple. I try to keep it simple with with the platforms, with the digital resources, and I try to find things that are free.
One other that I really love is called Edpuzzle, and that you can take any video, YouTube video, whatever type of video, and along the way add in stopping points and ask the kids some questions that relate to the video. So that's just been a great resource for me.
Dana, can I hop back and just, Lori had mentioned the first then strategy that is used often, where you give the non-preferred and then the preferred. And I think for upper elementary and even students into the secondary, it's important, I think, for all these tools that have been shared to think flexibly about them. So even something like first then, I might use with a student in 5th grade who doesn't necessarily need it for, his exact profile, but in terms of motivation, right? So, when we make his to-do list, we might call it a celebration list. And then after each task, when he checks it off, there's a 1-minute break to play guitar, or there's time, to go take a walk outside. So even, any of these concepts that are being shared out and these tools that are being shared out can be adapted. So that flexibility in use, I think, is a really important thing to think about, that, if you have a student with a need, pull tools from every direction and just change them or make them work for your student.
Right. I want to take some time to make sure that we address some of the key questions that are coming in the Q&A. And I know Laura and John have been in the background trying to navigate some of those and answer as many as they can. Laura, would you like to take over?
I'm learning so much. This is fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. And we're also getting just incredibly rich and thoughtful and earnest questions. So, but just trying to capture some of the trends. There's a lot of people wanting to know about specifically working with high school students who have executive function challenges and may also have some struggles with motivation. There was quite a few questions around that, or quite a few desires. They can kind of put questions that they want to hear more about. So we got a lot of votes for that. So any wisdom you can offer.
Dana, I was thinking that would be a whole nother conversation we could have sometime, because it's it's big.
Yeah.
But go, yeah. Matt, I'm sure you have some ideas.
I was like, oh, Laurie's going to answer it. Great. Executive functioning, I think that is the hardest one that we are dealing with our high school students in particular. And, I've been in meetings with parents quite recently, and I'm saying, it's not the student's fault that these things are happening for them. They're not getting the work done. They're just not at that stage yet to manage what's going on. And one of the things I've suggested, which is not on my top 100 things to do, but that is to use some form of response cost, because we're trying to help the students with intrinsic motivation. But if they don't have that intrinsic motivation, sometimes we're going to have to step in and help them with extrinsic motivation. And what we found with the high school students, particularly because the parents are often at home as well, is that you can introduce some form of checks and measures around use of the mobile phone, turning off notifications on Instagram. And, once you've completed the work, or you've done 25 minutes using the Pomodoro technique, I'll let you have your laptop computer back, or I'll let you have your mobile phone for 10 minutes. It's the idea that I think we have to get the parents a lot more involved in supporting the students with the executive functioning issue. And if the students are finding it hard to get motivated and engaged, we have to try and think, okay, I don't normally want to take things away or give things as a reward, but if that's what's actually going to work, and the student says, well, you know, I've had students, you know, before saying, yeah, that'll work for me. It happened in the past and it worked, so it will work again. So I think, you know, actually trying to get the parents involved a bit more with that. We've talked about, you know, a lot around agency and student agency and trying to create, you know, using the universal design for learning or using something like the Mario framework. For those students with the EF functioning challenges, again, we talked about narrowing the amount of opportunity to get distracted, which means so simplifying the number of platforms we're using simple command techniques when we're setting out work, using bullet points, boxing information, using different colors, making clear demarcations, giving really strict time parameters, using something maybe like a time timer or well, I mentioned the Pomodoro, and I know that's come up already. Visual time is when you can actually see the amount of time left on task, which then goes down. That's really useful to help with having engagement for a specific amount of time. And I think we have to start off with really short amount of time, right? I mean, we don't want to say, okay, if you sit and work for 30 minutes, then I'll give you 5 minutes break. You know, go for easy wins. Go for, like, if you sit for 10 minutes, you can have 5 minutes off. You know, everything's changed. This is a new normal. And so let's give the opportunities for success, because at the moment, these students aren't being successful. So we should really, you know, be generous in terms of creating those successes with them, for them.
And I think helping the teachers actually, you know, modify the tasks that they have so they can be more independent. For example, like you had said, use the command terms, break things down for them, give them exemplars, things that you would do when you're with them, and set them up to be independent, be able to do it without them having to, you know, text the not text the teacher, email the teacher, and think about it. And that framework will help them kind of set them up so they could be that, you know, not having to depend on others as well.
Erin?
I think another piece to think about too is that, and I am in no way an expert with adolescents, so I'm scaling down towards primary here, but I think it applies to all, is that if you think about what are the processes that the human brain can't ignore, that can be a really great piece to it. So our brains can't ignore seeking activities, things that involve, you know, storytelling or play and humor. So, you know, that hook at the beginning of something can sometimes be, you know, if you make something really preferred, then you can slide a student into a non-preferred once you have them with you. So that's
so brilliant. That's exactly right. Oh, that's really helpful. You all have addressed this so beautifully, but just to go into a little bit more sharing in depth, we're getting a lot of questions about just how to assess students' learning, and a lot of the ideas and activities and experiences you shared can be formative assessment for sure. But I think the attendees here would just love to hear more of your thinking about assessment and evaluation tools, and then maybe even leading into just your thoughts about evaluating student growth and learning for the end of the year kind of reporting. So big spectrum of ideas there, but very earnest questions coming around assessment and evaluation from the people who are with us today.
I think there's some easy wins you can do as far as assessment. You can give a reading assessment using FMP or Fountas and Pinnell or any of the leveled reading type things with students. And that is what I'm doing. And then again, what we had to do was we had to prioritize our goals and our objectives. And so prioritizing those first and assessing only those objectives, and all the other ones right now, we're just saying not at this time.
Right.
Because we want the focus to be on those objectives.
Perfect. Other thoughts?
I think, yeah, one thing that our school is doing is that we're trying to bring in, you know, you talked about that student voice, so we're trying to bring in student reflection more heavily in our reporting for the end of the year. So in the weekly reflections that the students do at the end, everybody's involved in, you know, on Friday on sort of reflecting back on the week. The teachers are really kind of specifically targeting those questions so that they pull out the information they need to assess their learning on the unit. So not only the kind of the you know, the work that they do, that they post on Seesaw and things like that, but then also in how are they thinking metacognitively about their own learning.
Right. Oh, that's so thoughtful. Matt, I think you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about diversity in assessment anyway. And particularly when you move into the middle years and the high school, I think a lot of time teachers can believe that we have an assessment criteria, which means they're going to write an essay to meet those criteria. And actually, students really don't need to write an essay a lot of the time to meet the criteria. They can create a rap, or they can draw a picture, or they can create an artwork and provide a rationale for it. We need to understand that we have these criteria, and it doesn't matter how the student meets the criterion as long as they're met. And the skill to that, I think, as well, is providing enough scaffold with the student when it comes to deciding on what task it might be, so that whatever task they create is successful, right? Because one of the things I've learned when I've given greater autonomy and agency is that they still need enough structure and scaffold in place so that they know that whatever they're creating or going to do is going to be successful. But I think students often have a lot more creativity than we give them credit for. And what happens as they get older, they think that the essay is going to be the one which is going to get them the marks, right? And it doesn't have to be. It can be so many other things. So hopefully this is another opportunity to bring in UDL again, Universal Design for Learning, with multiple memes. There's multiple memes.
I love it. That's incredibly helpful. Dana, what kind of time do you want to have me hand it back to you, or?
We can have time for one more question.
Okay, great, thanks. The other, I think just another big question area is language acquisition, which again, you guys have shared some incredibly helpful insights and recommendations, but just to give a little bit more airtime to, in a blended context, let's say as we have the opportunity to be back with our kids in some fashion in person, but also from the online context, recommendations you all have around language acquisition, just how to help that develop and nurture students' confidence around it a little bit too.
I can answer that. So as you know, the number one thing, one of the best things to develop language is to read, right? It's going to increase your vocabulary. There's just so many benefits from it. When they're younger, it's just, that's the biggest thing that I tell the parents is just read. It's like the Matthew effect to those kids that are read too little compared to, that are read to a lot. Their vocabulary is a lot more depressed as to those kids who have been read to every night in several books, and, talking about the books, asking them questions, asking them to sequence it. They can use the pictures. First this happened, then this happened, next this happened, depending on where they are in the grade level. If they're, early years, as they get older, you can ask them using the story grammar parts. What was, what's the setting? What's, what's the problem in the story? What are the events? And just talking about what's happening, talking about the vocabulary, using morphology, the parts of the words, those kind of things, talking about the meanings of the parts. That's really helpful for language acquisition.
I couldn't agree more. I love that. Thank you, Lee. All right.
Lane, you've just reminded me of some of the programs out there from Linda Moved Bell. I think she's also a really good resource, like Seeing Stars, Visualizing and Verbalizing, the math program Cloud9 Math, is it? Yeah, there's some great programs from Linda Moved Bell as well to investigate, to help with the language development.
So for therapy, I do often use Visualizing and Verbalizing, Linda Moved Bell. That's for one-on-one therapy with kids, or actually can be used in the classroom. That really helps to help them visualize and make a picture in their mind. Because we have to think of kids that have like they have a language disorder. It takes them over 30 exposures to really learn a vocabulary compared to kids that are neurotypical.
Right. And I think that, that just goes so much to to building their confidence and their insights about how that's going to work when they're all by themselves. You guys have been so thoughtful about promoting student agency and independence and confidence. Just to reassure everyone who's posting a lot on the chat and more on the Q&A, we're going to, as Dana shared, we're going to be sending you a recording of the webinar and the resources that were voiced and typed out. Probably within about 6 hours, you're going to get the best resource of your life, because it's all this wisdom from all our incredible panelists. And we're just so grateful that our attendees were here. I'm going to hand it over to Dana to wrap up our time with you, but thanks to everybody.
Thanks, everyone. I put in a link in the chat if you want to sign up to be a panelist in the future. And we're looking for more panelists, more ideas, obviously. Everyone's just volunteering their time right now. So I want to thank all the teachers who are here today. You guys are fantastic. And my team at ISS for basically just taking a little idea I had about pairing people up, and it has grown exponentially. And as you can see from the comments, there's so many other offshoots that we can do just from one topic, and we're trying to figure out how to best meet the needs of all our teachers and also be cognizant of teachers' time. So thank you so very much, and we appreciate your time and your vulnerability and generosity in sharing with us today. And we're going to keep trying to do these as much as we can to try to continue to build a bridge for teachers around the world. So thank you, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. We'll be doing one on grading and reporting, and the week after that on how do we continue online engagement, because that's getting tough. And kids are getting, but we also have to write report cards. So we're gonna cover both of those two things as the two next upcoming webinars, and we'll keep going from there. So thank you, everyone. And until next week, see you later. We'll send out everything in a little bit.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.